We begin this morning with a Fox News alert. Right now, President Trump is on his way to France for the G7 summit, just hours after securing a peace deal with Iran.
Yeah, the agreement expected to be signed in Switzerland on Friday, allowing time for mine removal in the Strait of Hormuz. Stage 1 of this deal includes reopening the strait, while Stage 2 reshapes power in the Middle East, limiting Tehran's weapons capabilities.
We're just going to keep on working at it, keep on driving energy prices down, keep on ensuring that that region of the world is less of a basket case, and finally and most importantly, celebrate the fact that I think we can say with confidence Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning. I'm Carly Shimkus.
And I'm Todd Pyro. First, we turn it over to Trey Yingst on the deal live in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. After more than 100 days in a state of war, there is an agreement between the United States and Iran. President Trump posting on Truth Social overnight saying, quote, "The great deal will bring peace and security to the whole region. Many presidents have tried to make peace with Iran, and all have failed before me. The leaders of the region have, for the first time, found a president who can help them achieve real peace." With the opening of the strait, upon the signing of the deal on Friday, for purposes of mine removal, oil will flow on both ends again for the region and the world. A signing ceremony is set to take place on Friday in Geneva, Switzerland. Before the deal was signed, it was nearly derailed. The Israelis targeted Hezbollah with strikes in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Iranian officials immediately vowed to respond with missile fire toward Israel. A diplomat with knowledge of the situation told Fox News that Qatari mediators stayed in Tehran, conducting extensive negotiations coordinated with the United States. Vice President Vance described to Fox News what those final moments were like before the agreement was reached. Could you take us behind the scenes of what that moment was like leading up to this deal actually being signed?
Well, Trey, you're exactly right. I mean, after the Israelis struck Beirut, we were very worried, and we saw a lot of evidence that the Iranians were going to launch a large number of missiles at the Israelis. With our communication with them over the course of getting to this signed peace deal, they assured us that they were not going to respond to the Israelis, and they were going to sign this agreement and get to peace. Now, of course, you always have to verify these things, Trey, and we know that there are a lot of people in the Middle East who do not want to make this deal happen.
I spoke with President Trump before the agreement was signed. He was optimistic about what this means for the region. And the president also said he was getting directly involved to ensure the Iranians didn't fire missiles at Israel. Clearly, he was successful, and the deal has been signed. Guys?
Yeah, and Trey, when it comes to the deal, the vice president also in that interview said that this would mean the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and our military blockade of it would dissolve. He said the number 2 objective that has been reached is that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon or buy one. That is built into this agreement. Has there been any reporting or any information to your knowledge on the exact language of this deal that would ensure both of those 2 objectives?
Yeah, it's a great question. And ultimately, as it relates to the Strait of Hormuz, we believe that will be opened immediately upon signing on Friday. The nuclear issue is a separate but similar issue, and the detailed discussions as it relates to Iran's nuclear program will happen in the next 60 days. And there are a lot of technical details to discuss. When I talked to the president yesterday, he described where the highly enriched uranium is buried deep underground in the aftermath of Operation Midnight Hammer. And it is so far underground, there are only 2 countries in the world, the president says, the United States and China, that even have the equipment to get this enriched uranium out from underneath the earth, where it's buried under a mountain. And so there are these technical details that will have to be worked out. And we know, according to the Trump administration, the International Atomic Energy Agency is going to be involved to ensure that not only that highly enriched uranium, but also the other enriched material is either diluted or destroyed in the country, possibly exported in some capacity, and also that Iran doesn't maintain the ability to enrich uranium with these advanced centrifuges that they had at their nuclear facilities.
Trey, at the end of the second soundbite you had with the vice president in your conversation, he said lots of people don't want this deal to happen. Besides the usual suspects, do you think the vice president was referring to factions within Israel?
Yes. There are many Israelis, officials here in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, that do not want this deal because they believe it doesn't address what they are concerned most about. But the president and members of the administration have tried to tell the Israelis, look, this ultimately is going to address Iran's nuclear program. And privately, Israeli officials talking to Fox News over the past several weeks agreed they also want a deal. They want the right deal. And we are still waiting to get the final language of this agreement. But broadly, it is going to open the Strait of Hormuz, and it will ultimately address Iran's nuclear ambitions. There are these other questions, though, as it relates to the situation in Lebanon, where Israeli ground forces remain in the south of Lebanon. There are reports of an Israeli strike in southern Lebanon this morning. And the Israelis certainly will be looking to the north, where Iran-backed Hezbollah remains in Lebanese territory. And so Israeli officials certainly are not happy with this agreement. But the bottom line here, President Trump didn't want an endless war in the Middle East. He wanted a situation that would address his key priority, and that was ensuring that Iran never had a path to a nuclear weapon. And those are exactly the detailed discussions that are going to take place over the next 60 days to ensure that is not the case.
Also, Trey, the vice president said yesterday that the president set the U.S. out to eliminate the nuclear threat of Iran, which is done. He said it's done, so that is incredibly optimistic. But he also said that now the goal has shifted to building a new era of Middle East prosperity and success. And when you hear something like that, you obviously think about the Abraham Accords and if other countries within the Middle East can sign on to them. How much of a realistic possibility do you think that is right now?
It's certainly a realistic possibility, and President Trump even called on these countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia to sign the Abraham Accords. Because ultimately, if he can do that, Israel's going to get something very valuable out of that, normalized ties with other Gulf countries. And we've seen what happens when they can normalize ties with countries like Bahrain or the UAE. During the 40-day war, Operation Epic Fury, with the Iranian regime, these Gulf countries were taking heavy incoming fire, and the Israelis actually sent Iron Dome air defense interceptors to the UAE to help their friends and partners shoot down the incoming Iranian fire. There is direct tourism between Israel and the UAE. You can now fly directly from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi or Dubai. And the president understands this is a representative example of what could come in the future. And so he is encouraging these countries to normalize ties with Israel. We also have this parallel effort with the Lebanese government, which is quite interesting. This is led by Secretary of State Rubio, to get a normalization agreement together between the Israeli and Lebanese governments with one common goal: to disarm Hezbollah. And if that takes place, you're opening a whole nother opportunity with Israel and its neighbor to the north to stabilize the situation there. And so a lot of details to be worked out in the months ahead. And certainly ceasefires are never clean. They're never perfect. But this is a chapter that has been closed for the region and a new chapter open, opportunity for the Middle East, according to Trump administration officials.
Leads to a very big week ahead. Trey Yingst, amazing as always. Thank you, sir, for your reporting.
All right now, President Trump is on his way to the G7 summit after reaching a peace deal with Iran. And when it comes to the regime's uranium stockpile, our commander-in-chief telling the Wall Street Journal, quote, "We'll get the nuclear dust later on when we're ready to go in and do it. I'd say over the next month or two. There's no rush." Former NSC Chief of Staff under President Trump, Alex Gray, joins me now. Alex, good morning. Great to see you on this day. We don't know exactly what's in this deal when pen meets paper, but we are hearing that the Strait of Hormuz will reopen on Friday and that there's some semblance of language in it that ensures that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. What is your reaction to what we know about this deal so far?
Yeah, well, Carly, I actually think yesterday was President Trump's birthday, but the gift ended up being his gift to the world and to the American people with this deal. Everything we've seen about this deal so far, and granted, we don't have all the information yet, but everything we've seen indicates we will never see in our lifetime an Iranian nuclear weapon. And the reason for that is the president has determined since 2015, when he first entered national politics, that he would not permit that to happen. And he has shown the Iranian terror regime that he is willing to use force in a very decisive way to prevent that from happening. Look, this deal is going to have lots of complicated aspects to it, but the number one thing preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is the reality that Donald Trump and hopefully his successor, whoever that is, will use their American military might to prevent the Iranians from ever trying to do this again. And the president's demonstration of that strength, I think, is probably the greatest guarantee guarantee that Iran will never go nuclear.
Well, you mentioned President Trump and his successor. Let's talk about somebody who came before him, and that would be former President Barack Obama, who entered into the JCPOA with Iran. Here's what he has to say about the signing of this deal right now. Watch this.
It is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place and had worked for a long stretch of time before the United States pulled out of it.
Other elements of Democrat criticism come from people like Seth Moulton, who has said that all this deal does is reopen the strait, which was already open before this war began. So how is that a win? What's your reaction specifically to what former President Obama said? And then, of course, other Democrat criticism coming from Mr. Moulton in Massachusetts as well.
Well, Carly, it's hard to even know where to begin. Barack Obama literally piled cash that his administration had taken from every bank in the Washington area. They withdrew cash, put it on pallets, and gave it to the Iranians essentially as a bribe to please play nice and not develop a nuclear weapon. The JCPOA was probably the worst American diplomatic the deal, call it a deal, barely, the worst American diplomatic effort since the Second World War. And ultimately, it ended up putting President Trump in a position, if you play it out over 10 years, where he had no choice but to go in and do what he did because the Obama administration's disastrous diplomacy put Iran on the pathway to a nuclear weapon. They gave them on a silver platter the money and the capacity and the time to threaten the entire world. And only Donald J. Trump was able to actually put a stop to it. And so for Barack Obama to try and make it out that he has somehow gotten the same deal as Donald Trump is just preposterous.
All right. So also the president right now on his way to the G7 summit in Switzerland. And some of the leaders also attending that summit were critical of the president's handling of the Iran war. So it sounds like he's going to arrive with some wind at his back. What do you make of this G7 summit and what could come out of it?
Well, look, these are a lot of talk usually, but I think the president's going into it with a strong hand. The goal here, obviously, is to continue to get our NATO allies, our major industrial allies, to follow America's leadership on trade, to trade with us fairly, to focus on the future of the Middle East. Obviously, they disagreed with the president strongly, and many of them, on the decision to use military force in Iran, but we need them united with us going forward to try and find a stable, peaceful Middle East. And ultimately, we're going to need our allies on important issues like containing China's threat, both in Europe, in the Middle East, and elsewhere. So the president's going into this with a lot of leverage.
Alex Gray, thank you so much for joining us, for your time and expertise. As always, we very much appreciate it.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.